Good morning.
Hi.
It's good to be back again. Good morning to the youth today, because these first few slides are for you, so you can then. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to stand here now, aren't I? And then you can go and join your group in the other room. But for now, I think you know what my name is now. I think it's been said several times, Andy Blake. I've been here once before, and it was nice, but the floor wasn't quite as good as it is now. So it's nice to come back and see everything pristine and see some faces I know. So I won't hang about because I know you want to get off. So the first one is I used to fly with MAF. Does anyone know what that stands for? I thought you could say Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries there for a minute. Yes, that's right, it's MAF. And I did 12 years with them in Tanzania. And I lived 7 of those out in the bush in a place called Kasulu. And it was so dusty there that flying back home again, because this was on the west of the country, everywhere I went was east, so you get the sun full in your face in the morning. And when you come home again, it's in your face again going west. And there was so much dust and so little development, it was easy to fly past Kasulu because you couldn't see the difference between the roofs of the houses and the surrounding mud. But then it developed and it changed. Now, that isn't a hospital, obviously. The hospital is on the other side of that hill. Does anyone tell me what that's for? What's the point of this slide?
I guess it shows how long it takes to get there.
Yeah, actually, it takes about. They've got I was going to say Lammy. They have a tarmac road now, but in those days they didn't. And I used to fly the patients in. Often they were little babies, and that's the airstrip. And it's 5,000 feet above sea level. It's 600 meters long. Heathrow would be 3 kilometers long, just to get the difference. This is 600 meters. And it got narrower and narrower and narrower because they didn't maintain it very well until it was really narrow and very rough. And then the hospital, they come with a car and come and pick me up and take my patient in. So this is what it's like when you're preparing for a landing. You have your little chart there to tell you what the orientation of the airstrip is, even though it's not a proper airport. And this place is called Solwarambo, and I could never find it, even with the GPS running down to 0. And I'd look down and I still couldn't see it because there was like a Union Jack of footpaths that crossed all over the place. And I used to have some nurses in the back, and they would say, "It's down there." And I didn't know where it was. Eventually, I got it right each time, but it was always a bit of a mystery which it was. So here's one of the nurses from, I think they call the Brant mission, and we used to take them right out into the sticks, landing in these fairly remote places really, and they would take a weighing thing for babies, and they'd have a little card and they'd show them whether the health of the baby is developing, and they'd jab them with whatever it was they needed to be jabbed with, and they'd give a little talk on health and a little talk on the gospel. And the babies didn't mind being jabbed at all. But man alive, did they hate being weighed. And they somehow kind of taught each other this was a terrible thing by howling. So one baby coming out of the weighing thing, like the next one, this is going to be really terrible. And I was always amused by the fact that they didn't mind the jab. This is a place that's almost on the border of Malawi and Zambia. It was one of the most remote places. And the approach is from where you're sitting, if you like, onto that hill, and then down over the trees, and the runway would be this way. And again, sun in your face in the afternoon. And if there is strong sunlight, you get what's called a black cloud effect. In other words, the clouds, or lack of them, and the hill is exactly the same to look at out of the window. You can't tell the difference. And you know it's there, and you're watching the GPS and it's going 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. So I've got to turn left in a minute. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I remember one particular day I did only just see that at the point of the turn. I was wondering if I'd have to turn without seeing it at all. And then more challenging than that actually was getting down over the trees without getting stuck in them, because again the airstrip's quite short. But I did enjoy going there, it's very nice. And so that's probably it really. I just wanted to show you this picture of a snake before you went. Anyone? We've got 2 types of mamba in the garden. If you could remember to pray for this, guys. A green mamba, they're mostly fatal. The black mamba, which is the most poisonous in Africa, that is fatal. Can you guess why it's called a black mamba? Because it's actually a grey, light grey tummy and a sort of darker grey back, so it's not that.
So black inside of the nut.
Again?
The black in the inside of the nut.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the last thing you see before it bites you is this black. It's kind of an indication of intent. Yes, as I was living in Kasulu, this small village, I was there 7 years, I became aware of people who were poor. As opposed to seeing them on a screen. You can get quite a lot from the TV coverage of poverty. It can touch you for sure. But when you start to know who they are, and then perhaps one day they don't come, they used to come every week, the local beggars, and these were people who probably had lost their children to HIV/AIDS, road accidents, or desertion actually. I'm going to another town, I will get a job and send you money. And it fizzled out, and they were left pretty much destitute. And that is an injustice for sure. I became more aware of how much the plane was costing, and how little, actually, carefully placed, could make a major difference to somebody's life. And I went through a series of these, that's not fair, kind of reactions to what I saw. And without going on to too much detail, now, school fees are free. You still need shoes and bits and pieces which you don't really need actually, but there are still things you must buy, like you just sent your grandchildren, I guess, back off to school fairly recently, so you're familiar with the latest prices of these things. And that's, of course, one of the reasons why we have a work duty for the students to come in, do a bit of work, get their pocket money, buy their shoes and their school bag and so on. But as I was starting to fly in Kasulu, when I landed, there'd always be a little gaggle of these local village people, and they wouldn't have shoes on. They may not go to church on Sunday because they might not have a nice clothes to wear at church. They almost certainly didn't go to school. And I was thinking, well, how do you help these old people? The ones that came to beg were mostly fairly old, sometimes in their 40s, but usually older. How do you help them? Because you know what it's like when there's poverty and you come in with a great new idea. Hey, I know how to do your growing beans. I've got an even better way of doing this. Why don't you buy my beans and try that and you'll get a better yield? And people are thinking, I don't think so. You know, I'm poor, but I'm alive and I know the system works. So there's a real deep conservatism based around risk of older people. And for me, a double whammy of language and culture. So there wasn't much I could do directly with the older people. And the children, their children, they weren't there anyway. And so that left the grandchildren. Now, in order to produce honest, upright Christian citizens, it became clear that something different had to happen. And that's how basically Helper was formed, to see what grandchildren could do to help their older ones. And so we formed Sunshine, or actually Friends of Helper, the Helper Msaidizi Trust. Yes, that was it. The Helper Msaidizi Trust. Msaidizi is Swahili for helper. Because I was thinking, culturally sensitive, I better choose a name that they can hook onto, the local people. And so they'd say, so what do you do? Oh, I work for msaidizi. Msaidizi? What's that mean? You mean helper? So that was a complete waste of time. But anyway, this is what we formed. And this is actually one of the pilot's wife that used to fly at the base I was in Kasulu, whose husband, the pilot taking the picture, I think, had come to show where he used to work. And we had a head teacher that I used to teach with called Beryl Ebbs years ago. Picture of her in a minute. We came from the same school, and her husband died shortly, well, about the same time as this actually. And I said, Beryl, how'd you fancy coming to Africa and starting a primary school? And she cried. And she cried with joy because she'd always wanted to go to Africa, but her husband didn't. And so this was her opportunity. So we're an English medium primary school. We call ourselves Tuition Centre now, but we're a primary school. In fact, It's the 12th, isn't it? 12th, 13th and 14th. If you could pray for our 11 plus group who are in a vehicle to take them to a school we have an arrangement with, and they sit their exam. It's the 11 plus, but we call it Standard 7 NECTA exam. And that gives them an entrance into secondary school. And there's the lady, that's Beryl. And this is who we are. This is the helper msaidizi Trust. We call ourselves Sunshine for the School, and the picture is supposed to show that the way out of poverty, the way out of this sort of horizontal going nowhere, I'm alive but I'm not achieving anything, I'm still having to sell my tomatoes in the market and everything's okay as long as nothing happens. The only way out of that is vertical. And you would have thought somebody who's been an English teacher in schools in England for that period of time might have realised that, but no. I had to see it before I thought, yes, the only way out of this is education. This is why we're doing what we're doing. And so that's what we hope that we're doing. I think you know probably where that is by now. We're Lake Tanganyika, which is the deepest lake in Africa and the second deepest in the world. Anybody know what the deepest is? It's Lake Baikal in Russia. And this, in case you feel sorry for me at all, about these poor missionaries, they live such a hard life out in the dry and dusty. I can see that from my garden. That's Lake Tanganyika. And on the other side is the Congo, and you get lovely sunset. But more wonderfully, occasionally, you get the most gorgeous moonset, and that runs a line of gold across the lake, and it is just fabulous. So I praise God and thank Him that I can actually have had the experience of living there. We've had a lot of trouble with our school, trying to get it. We bought the land, but we haven't been able to develop it for a number of reasons. And now, incomprehensibly, after the dry season, which is about 6 months, before the rains came, the lake decided to overflow its banks. How that happens, I have no idea, except we're on the Rift Valley, so I don't know if there's some underground pressure or something. But half of our land is under there, and now there ain't enough, I don't think, to build our school. So if you could pray for what we're going to do about that. Are we going to sell what's left and then find somewhere else? Finding somewhere else is not easy. The government prefers all education systems out of town, which increases transport, and it's not the safest road in the universe, really. And so we don't really want to join a sort of an education ghetto. For us, education, church, garage, post office, it's part of community, isn't it? So we don't want to see them boarding in another place. So this is what I mentioned we were doing. Unless the Lord is in this, it's useful. If the Lord's in this, then it's powerful. And what we're hoping is that these, as they grow up, will take their faith with them. And we're getting to that point already, because we've had 2 out of finished university, we've got 1 starting, we've got 2 at teacher training college, and we have, I think it's 7 doing A-levels and a bunch doing O-levels. So they're beginning to flee the nest. And whilst all the time they're in primary school and secondary, they're popping backwards and forwards, and we're having Christian teaching and so on. Once they go, then they're on their own, and that's the first test of their faith. And I think you've all been through this, letting your children go to university and so on, and just hoping that they navigate the minefield. Then these old biddies that I mentioned at the beginning can get looked after, and these will never have to beg. They will be sending their children to school, paying for them. And then in turn, hopefully, a trickle down. So when I finish doing what I'm doing, which can't be much longer now because I'm getting ancient, they themselves will be able to continue. We're very blessed in having 2 good leaders, and they're doing it with me not here. WhatsApp has provided a wonderful opportunity to stay in touch. And so they're saying, what do you think we should do with this? Or we're thinking of doing this, what do you think? Or here's the statement of accounts for last month, all on WhatsApp. So actually, even being remote, I don't feel like I'm not there, and they've still got access. these are the first two we put through university. They both joined us at secondary school. The one in yellow is now our head teacher, and she went through secondary and then to A-levels in Arusha, 3 years at Dar es Salaam. She's got a 2-1 in language, and I call that language, it's English and Swahili. And she's a wonderful Christian human being. Just being able to be in the same building with that woman is just a privilege. We also have Adisa, who you may remember, Edi or Adisa, who I've worked with for 25 years now, and she runs the office. She is also helps in the office. She's a stunning human being. Next to her is Adela, and she came to us Form 1 secondary and said, I'm not satisfied with my secondary school. I want to be a doctor. How can I be a doctor if there's no chemistry teacher at secondary school? And I was surprised actually, because I didn't know what I was going to do at that age, and she'd not only realised what she wanted, but realised the school wasn't going to deliver it, and realised she had to come back and say something about it. So 3 bunches of initiative came back to me, and I wasn't too keen because it was 3 times as expensive in those days sending a private school child to school rather than a government. But I thought, well, look at that. I think I'll have to say yes. Well, she's done 4 years at university and in Dodoma. She's not a doctor, she's a nurse. She's in charge of an intensive care unit in a paediatric hospital that's the best in the country. And her job is to take the babies just after they've had their operation, and she's in charge of 20 nurses. Her mum used to sell rice cakes. What a story. I mean, if we can get that sort of vertical movement on everybody, then it's a good thing. She's a lovely girl. And these two have just done their A-levels, and by a complete fluke, they're going to the same institute, but for different reasons. The one on the left is studying business management, I think, and the one on the right has just finished his national service. You do a 3-month national service if you want to. The one on the left, she came and was our classroom assistant for a time, and he's going to be in procurement. So prayers for that, because procurement can be an opportunity for the wrong sort of thinking. I don't know if I showed you that last year. I think I did. She had a colostomy, which we paid for it to be reversed. She came back to the office recently. She's quite a lot older now, not doing brilliantly well. And here's another one. And so she has to go and have a colostomy too. She hasn't been yet. And here are some elective surgeries of goiter. You're supposed to smile in the after pictures, aren't you? And this is little Thomas, who liked the lactogen milk, the formula milk we were giving him so much he didn't want to go on to solids. And I'm not sure if that is actually a blood relative, but Bibi means grandma. So that's Bibi Thomas with little Thomas. And then this happened. A lady who lived around the corner from us married somebody in Dar es Salaam, and she had these twins and then got very sick and said to her husband, this wasn't in the main town, he was just a farmer, I'm going back to my mum. So she went back to her mum, which is obviously in Kigoma, and her mum said, I don't like the look of you, we're going to hospital now. And she never came out, leaving these two behind. So we supplied 6 months of lactogen formula milk, which is pretty expensive, but a couple I showed this to in another church said we're paying for that, and very kindly gave £300. So we thought that put us in the clear, until this lady arrived, having had triplets. And she didn't even live near a hospital, she lived in a village called Bitale. And so we thought, oh, here we go again. And the social services knocked on the door and said, look, is there any chance you could support one of these kids? I said, well, you can't support one of them, we'll support them. And so we took them on. And thankfully, one of them didn't like lactogen at all, so preferred mum's milk. So we only had to buy 2 lots. There was this little girl who had Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a cancer. She had an operation back and forth to Dar es Salaam, 3 days on the train, 3 days back again. But finally, she's at school now, and this eye is dead, but it's not infected, so it can stay there. So you've heard about Sunshine. The other thing we do, and how we started actually with Adela and Alicia, was the government side of things, the students that we sponsor for government schools that don't come to Sunshine School. And as they grow bigger, our lot join these, and they do their work for fees. They clean up. We've got lots of trees. They do make a lot of mess, but they're lovely. And so they clean all that up. They cook their meal and clean it. They have an English lesson, a Bible study, and we worship together. And so that's the Saturday group. And this is Adisa making them say hi. Babu is granddad and Babu. So they're just finishing their day there. And here's every Friday afternoon, the high spot of the day for Sunshine is their assembly. Do you remember your school assemblies? Were they the high spot of the week? Don't think so. But ours tend to be. I've met this bloke on the Burundian-Tanzanian border. He's a German and he was cycling from Cairo to Mozambique, as you do. And he couldn't get into Tanzania. He was stuck on the border because he didn't have enough dollars. And so I sat with him, and from his German internet banking to my UK internet banking, he paid me the money that I gave him the dollars for. Just the extraordinary world we live in now. So he came and showed the kids his bicycle, and this is how I cook my food and all the rest of it. He's a teacher. Here's Ferdinand. He's our 11 plus teacher, just being made youth pastor at his church. This is Zuena. She was the 26th person last year to give her life to the Lord. She had a real struggle, so Muslim background family. So we have to be careful not to proselytize. But she made it in the end, bless her. In fact, I got a text from her yesterday. Hello, Babu. This is Zawadi. Zawadi Swahili for gift. She's a class 3 teacher this year. This is Pili, who did O-levels with us a long time ago, but didn't have much confidence and asked for a job. Didn't do brilliantly, but she did kind of okay. So she was our school cook for 4 years, and then said, can I have some training? So we put her through teacher training, and she's running the Checker Chair, the preschool, now with us. And this is Alicia, who got married last year to Choya. They can't live together yet because Choya lives on the other side of the country with a 3-year contract as a government driver. So he's working his way slowly to come back. And he's recognised that Alicia has a real ministry, and he's prepared to move, which is quite un-Tanzanian. Same thing happened with Adisa, her husband. Has realised Adisa's value to help her, and as normally they would say, come with me and now do this. And that's happened with one of our other trustees, who's a nice young bloke, but he's very old-fashioned. And we've lost a head of lower school, so she can sit in his shop and make sure no one fiddles the money on the till. And she can come for board meetings and so on, but we've lost her as a teacher. He would have helped Pili settle in. Yes, Mama Joff, the boy who's just done national service, that's hers. This one's just gone to start A-levels on the other side of the country. It took 2 train journeys of about a day each, and then 2 buses to actually get to this place. It's almost in Mozambique, near where the other one went. I've flown there. It's a long way away. And why does this work? Well, I suppose on a secular level, if I could persuade enough people to give some money, it would work anyway. But that's not really, I don't think, what this is all about at all. It's driven by this meeting in the morning of our staff, where they come in and read 45 minutes worth of Bible, and then we discuss stuff, pray about it, and then they begin their preparation. And the children come at 1 o'clock for dinner, and then they start school in the afternoon.
Mwenye nguvu kama wewe Bwana?
Nani kama wewe?
Mponyaji kama wewe, kimbilio.
Nani kama wewe?
Waweza kama wewe, Mungu wetu.
Nani kama wewe?
Waulinzi kama wewe, Mungu wetu.
Nani kama wewe?
Twasema
Hakuna mwingine kama wewe Bwana.
twasema
Hakuna mwingine kama wewe Bwana.
twasema hakuna.
So that's how we start our day. We read 45 minutes of the Bible, we pray together, and it's an opportunity for the Holy Spirit to turn our heads forwards, I think. That's how it works, and that's why it works. Here's Adela in Dar es Salaam, now a nurse, and I'm just on my way home. We met up on a gorgeous beach called Kipepeo Beach, which is called actually Butterfly Beach. We were talking about butterflies before, weren't we? Can you hear me okay? A little bit, yeah. So here's Ben. He always was a big boy. He's joined us even when we used to run a little orphanage years ago. I think he was about 4 then. And this is him now. We sent him off last year to do pharmacy, and it didn't suit him. Also, the college was not as straightforward as it might have been, and he was a bit shocked at that, having only ever known us as management, and we were pretty much straight down the line. And he became quite disillusioned and came back. And so he asked if he could do something else. He's now learning how to drive a JCB digger, which, looking at him, I think is a better fit, to be honest. This little girl here, this was a lesson I was teaching years ago. It was our first ever class. Beryl's in there somewhere, and that blue hat is Ella Sear, our current head teacher, who was classroom assistant, having just finished her O-levels at that time. And this little girl here was totally in charge of that table, intelligent girl, and is now at Sokoine University studying agronomy. And agronomy is advanced soil science for agricultural purposes. However, she had a bit of an upset. If they get that far, we buy them a second-hand laptop. And her friend was working with her on some project or other and spilt a glass of water on it and killed it. So she hasn't got a laptop at the moment, which is a bit of a shame. Here's an example of a class. This is Zawadi's class, Standard 3. We go for about 10 children, not more, because we're English medium, we're non-fee paying, and we want that relational thing to carry through. If a child, and what do you think the average child classroom size would be for children this age?
80.
Keep going. Yeah, 100 actually. Can be as many as 100. So thank you. What happens though if they don't make it through? And some don't. We've got one that's taking their 11 plus at the moment. We don't think she's going to make it. What happens to them? Well, the usual thing, for a girl anyway, a sewing machine and lessons to use it properly to earn a living with it. And this is the Bolshoi Ballet. These are our little tinies. The checker chair, these are 5 years old, I suppose 6. And they are the most undernourished group we've ever had, actually. And the teachers are teaching them hard work because they're not terribly bright. And I think part of this malnourishment, brain development and all the rest of it, you can see how small they are, means that these may not get so high, but they'll still have Jesus, and we'll see what we can do with that. This is Benjamin, Edisa's number 2, who's actually doing very well in his O-levels, not quite sure how to carry a ladder yet, just enjoyed the picture. And we had a very special time. As Baptists, you're used to giving altar calls, I think. Would anyone like to come to the front and receive Jesus Christ? For me, I'd always bottled out of it, actually. I'd felt the resistance. The enemy does not want this. And finally, after teaching about the 7 purposes of the blood of Christ with this older group, I said, let's give you an opportunity to say yes to Jesus today, if you want to. To make it a bit easier, why don't we all shut our eyes? Because I've seen Billy Graham do this kind of thing, so I think I don't know what to do. And 3 of them put their hand up. And I said, thank you, and thank you, and thank you. And then 2 more did. And I said, well, if you'd like to go with Elisea into the next room, she's got a certificate, and she'll make a little prayer for you. And as they stood up, almost everybody else stood up instantaneously and just left the room as a group. It was leaving us with 6. So 25 children that day gave their lives to the Lord. It was just so exciting. And so now, as they're getting older, of course, they've got to hold their faith in their new environments. So another item for prayer.
Mwambani salama, ndiye mwambani salama.
Tumpigie Yesu makofi.
And then, think back to your school assembly again. I think we're almost at the end if you're thinking this is going on a bit long. If you think back to a school assembly, was it like this? What's the phrase, is it? Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, I think. So that's, for me, that's the high spot of the week. And this is who we are, this is the board. So on the left you've got Adisa, then Elisea, and then the one who's sadly had to leave teaching with us, for the moment at least, and then me on the right. And that's more or less right. Numbers have changed a little bit since I did that. So, in a sense, we're the victims of our own success, because as we support these children through, they start to get pretty expensive. If you can remember when your children were primary school, it wasn't too bad. Early secondary school, not too bad, but they certainly don't get any cheaper as they get older. And we've got a bunch coming through, so if you could pray that the Lord does bring in the resources we need. Well, we have a new chairman of Friends of Helper in the UK. Our Vicar Martin has taken over now. So do get in contact with him if you'd like to, or me. And there are some prayer newsletters that I've scattered around the place, so don't leave without one. And I think that's it. That was just going to be an echo from Isaiah, which is if. You know, I hate that word in the Bible because you know there's a choice coming and it's not going to be an easy one. So if we do this, I as the Lord can do that.